So Leah, tell me about the 3 different pieces you have in this exhibition.
Well, the first piece is the cinder blocks, which are constructed of corrugated cardboard and painted, and they were made a couple years ago. The second piece is a fence, also made out of cardboard, but chipboard. And then this third piece is the piece we're sitting in front of, called Rebuilding, which is also made of cardboard, and it's consists of fragments of houses which are kind of stacked together to build a new structure.
Tell me about the significance of using fragile material to construct something that is utilitarian. It appears like it should bear weight.
Well, one of the reasons I have used that, for example, with this piece, is kind of a reflection of what I see in the construction, the new construction that's happening now. In Philadelphia, where I live, there's new construction happening all the time, and they're like all over the country. In the suburbs, you see these new communities popping up, and I think they pop up quicker than people can move into them, and I often wonder about how long they'll be there. They just seem so, I guess, temporary. Also, I think, like especially with the fence, kind of that tension of this space that is so guarded, but at the same time would be very easy to break out of. Like the fencing becomes more of like a psychological fencing than an actual fencing, because you could actually break out of the space instead of being so caged in. It's like you've kind of constructed it yourself.
You talk about the works having a kind of human scale to it. Mm-hmm. That, for instance, this house is kind of scaled so that a person could fit inside, and I think the same with the fence. Why do you work that way?
I think, again, it's about kind of trying to create a psychology of space. I had been working very small with models, but I was always thinking about them in terms of psychology, but they were became more like head spaces. And I really wanted to push the idea of trying to create a psychological space within actual space, and I felt that there may be more of a bodily response to the space, and visceral response if it were to human scale. So I think it's important that both the fence and the house could only contain one person easily, and that yeah.
You talked a little bit about the significance of the grid for you, mm-hmm. and how you like to work within it. It's hard to move away from that. How do you see that in these pieces, or tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, I think just in terms of my studio practice, like the work requires a lot of gridding, a lot of measuring and precise cutting, or else it wouldn't come together successfully. So I think it's inherent in the work and in the process, the grid. And then I try and kind of push out of it, but it's always very subtle. Like with the fence, because it's cardboard, it kind of sags a little bit, and so it kind of pushes against the grid to give it more of a bodily feeling. And with this, again, it's like tweaked so subtly, but I wanted there to be like a little bit of a shifting to kind of show, again, I guess a human quality, and like someone playfully placing these together, putting them together to create a form. But I think it's just my tendency to pull back to the grid. Like even the extra pieces in the house get pulled back into kind of the gridded reference of architecture. And what happens, for example, in a new residential neighborhood when everything is so gridded. I think that I respond to that and the tension of like being built into this grid and the human pushing against that.
Do you work on multiple pieces at once, or do you kind of conceive of a series and move around from piece to piece?
Recently, the work has become more time-consuming, and so there really isn't so much of the ability to do that because one project will take so long. Like the fence took me 6 months to construct, and this took me close to a year. So I am like pretty focused on one idea at a time.
What are you working on next? Do you have ideas for new installations and new pieces?
I have a vague notion of working with furniture, and working with space and furniture in a very similar way that I've been working with architecture, and trying to kind of create relationships between furniture, but also using cardboard.